welcome to the deep dive.
Hey there.
So today we are really getting into a new film, well, a review of it, one that's got quite a bit of, history and expectation behind it.
Yeah, we're talking about Wolfman, the 2025 version.
Exactly. And we're diving into a specific review from Moviescrambe. Mary Munoz wrote this one.
Right, and it sounds like she gives a really detailed look at, well, what she thought worked and maybe what really didn't work in this new take on the classic monster.
Yeah, and those expectations, they're pretty high, aren't they? I mean, Leigh Whannell is directing.
The guy who did The Invisible Man in 2020.
Exactly, which was just incredible. Redefined how you could do those Universal monsters. So, yeah, huge bar set there.
And on top of that, this isn't just a standalone film, is it? It's part of Blumhouse trying to build their own sort of dark universe.
Right, their own thing, especially after Universal's big attempt with The Mummy. What was that, 2017?
Yeah, that didn't quite land the way they hoped.
No. So yeah, Blumhouse is trying again, a lot riding on this Wolfman.
For Whannell following up his hit, and for Blumhouse's whole monster plan.
Totally. So our mission here is really to, unpack this review by Mary Munoz. We want to pull out her key insights, the specifics she mentions.
Understand why she felt the way she did.
Exactly. Get a real sense of where she thinks this film nailed it, and maybe more critically, where it kind of fell down.
Okay, so where does the review start? The setup.
Yeah, apparently it kicks off back in 1995. Oregon forests. There are these unsettling rumors. Something about a wolf face.
Oh, creepy start.
Yeah.
Classic folk horror vibe.
Right. Then, boom, it jumps to the present day. We meet Blake. Christopher Abbott plays him.
Okay.
He finds out his father died, so he has to go back to his childhood home in Oregon. And he brings his wife, Charlotte, that's Julia Garner, and their daughter, Ginger. Matilda Firth plays her.
So, returning to a troubled past, family drama, setting the stage.
You got it. And, well, it seems like those old wolf face rumors don't stay rumors for long. Things get dramatic. The Wolfman is real.
Okay, standard horror setup, but potential there. Now, the review. It wasn't all negative, right? Munoz pointed out some definite strengths.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Despite the final verdict, she highlights some really strong points. One of the biggest, the sound design.
Ah, interesting. What did she say about it?
She called it a gorgeous soundscape, which, isn't a term you usually throw around for horror movie noise.
Gorgeous, wow. Okay, so what made it stand out?
It sounds like it was incredibly specific and, intentionally unsettling. She mentions details. The sputtering sound of an old generator firing up, the hum and whistle from old light bulbs, even just a noisy kitchen tap, little things designed to just constantly put you on edge.
So it's really using sound textures, not just jump scares, making the environment itself feel hostile.
Exactly. It's not just background filler. It's actively building that tension, that dread. And apparently it gets even more involved. It ties directly into Blake's transformation.
Okay, how so?
This is where it sounds really cool, according to the review. As Blake starts to change, the film actually shifts perspective, so you hear the world like he does.
Whoa, so auditory POV.
Yeah. Munoz mentions this one scene with a huge spider where the sound alone is apparently designed to make you feel, physically queasy.
Oof. Effective, though.
Totally. And what's interesting is she notes they don't overuse the classic wolf howls.
Oh. That's unexpected.
Yeah, she says, by holding back on that obvious sound, all the other creepy, unsettling noises, the creaks, the weird environmental sounds, maybe Blake's own sounds, they become way more powerful, more effective horror.
That's actually really smart. Avoids the cliche, makes the rest hit harder. Okay, so sound design, big plus. What else did she like? Christopher Abbott?
Oh, absolutely raved about him, called his performance brilliant, and the physical transformation itself.
Yeah. How was that handled? CGI?
Mostly practical, apparently. That's what the review stresses. Practical effects, prosthetics. She mentions the whole progression. Starts subtle, like a loose tooth, a deep scratch. Then gets more intense. A rippling torso. His knuckles thickening, this razor-sharp underbite developing, and then, the thick hair coating.
Sounds properly gnarly.
Yeah.
And well executed, if it's mostly practical.
Yeah, definitely sounds like a commitment to that visceral, physical horror. But the reviewer makes a point, you still feel Blake, the human, inside all that.
Ah, that's key, isn't it? Keeping the character amidst the creature.
Totally. And Munoz says Abbott pulls it off, even as he's losing speech, losing comprehension. Apparently his whimpers, the expression in his eyes, it cuts through. You see his struggle, his panic.
So it's not just a monster movie, there's pathos there. You feel for him even as he's changing.
Sounds like it. And the film uses POV shots to enhance that, right? To show
Yeah.
his perspective.
Yeah, the review mentions that too. You actually see the world through his new wolf eyes.
What's that like?
Well, she describes human eyes glowing this eerie green color from his perspective. Words sound distorted, guttural, and weirdly like flies speckle the edge of his vision. Flies? Huh. That's a strange, specific detail. Yeah, unsettling. Right. But the point is, it reinforces that Blake is still in there, trapped inside. It keeps you connected to him, even when he looks monstrous.
That's a really clever technique. Keeps the empathy going. Okay, and wasn't there some little Easter egg the reviewer noticed?
Yeah, a small thing, but nice. A removal truck shows up at some point.
Uh-huh.
And apparently it's got references on it that nod to both Whannell's early work and the original 1941 The Wolfman.
Ah, a little treat for the film nerds.
Exactly, a nice touch.
Okay, so let's recap the positives here. Stunning sound design, really specific and unsettling.
A brilliant central performance from Abbott, nailing both the physical horror and the human tragedy.
Supported by impressive practical effects for the transformation.
And clever use of POV shots to keep us inside Blake's head.
Honestly, based on just that, it sounds like it could be a really strong horror film.
It really does sound promising from those elements.
Yeah.
But the review takes a pretty sharp turn after highlighting those positives.
Okay. So despite those strengths, Munoz clearly felt the film didn't quite stick the landing. Where did she think it went wrong?
Well, the biggest target seems to be the writing, especially the dialogue early on.
The setup stuff.
Yeah, she found it pretty problematic. There's a bit where they're apparently explaining really adult concepts, emotional scarring, intergenerational trauma
Okay.
to Ginger, the daughter, who's primary school age. The reviewer felt it just came across as awkward and totally unnatural.
Yeah, that sounds like maybe talking at the audience through the kid rather than realistic dialogue, exposition dump.
Pretty much how she describes it. And the way they introduced Charlotte's character, Julia Garner's role,
Yeah.
the exposition about her not bonding with Ginger and being focused on her career, the reviewer called it hammy, clunky. Felt like obvious setup, not organic character stuff.
Ouch. Hammy dialogue is never a good sign. So the initial character work felt weak. What about the other performances besides Abbott? She was critical of Garner and the actress playing Ginger, right?
Yeah, this was another major sticking point for her. Matilda Firth as Jinwo. The review notes she spent a lot of time just panting and yelling, "Daddy."
Okay, maybe a bit one note.
Seems like it. And then Julia Garner as Charlotte. This was a big criticism. The reviewer felt she had this surprising lack of emotional range, given everything going on.
Really? For Julia Garner, she's usually so expressive.
I know. But the review mentions she mostly just widens her eyes or gawps, even in moments where you'd expect, screaming, terror, or something stronger. Munoz found it, quote, incomprehensible.
Wow. That's a harsh assessment, especially given the circumstances the character is in.
It is. And it seems linked to this broader feeling the reviewer had that Charlotte's character was just weakly written overall.
Okay.
And there's this thematic thing she points out, too, which she calls a crude take.
Crude take. What's that?
It's this underlying suggestion, apparently, that Blake has to become this monster so that Charlotte can somehow step up and become a better mother.
Oh. That sounds potentially a bit reductive. Or maybe even problematic if it's not handled carefully.
That's exactly the sense you get from the review. Munoz clearly felt it wasn't handled with any nuance. She actually calls it a waste of Julia Garner's talent. Basically implies the character concept was flawed from the start.
Yikes. Okay, so character and writing issues. What about the horror plotting itself? Did that work?
Not entirely, according to Munoz. She lists off what she calls classic shoddy horror decisions. You know those moments where characters do dumb things?
Ah, yes, the facepalm moments. Give us examples.
Okay, she mentions letting Wolf Blake back into the house when he's obviously dangerous.
No. Why?
Exactly. Running towards a barn that's locked when something's chasing them.
Instead of away.
Right. And running deeper into a forest they don't know instead of, say, back towards a road or civilization.
Okay, yeah. Those sound like textbook examples of things that frustrate audiences because they just break basic logic, even horror logic.
Totally. It makes the horror feel less earned, maybe. Because you're just annoyed at the character.
Yeah, it takes you out of it. And Charlotte, does her character stay sort of passive or underdeveloped?
Well, this is another point the review makes. Later on, apparently, she has this sudden shift. Becomes super competent, almost like a cliche.
How so?
She goes from city blazers and being seemingly ineffective to suddenly rocking a check shirt and knowing how to jumpstart a car battery.
Okay.
Aim a rifle like a pro, set up elaborate traps. It's a very abrupt change.
So she just flips a switch into, like, survivalist mode.
That's how the reviewers saw it. Too sudden, too convenient, too much of a trope. And she contrasts it with Whannell's previous film, Upgrade.
Which was so tight and clever.
Exactly. So the implication is, you expect smarter writing than that from him.
Yeah.
It felt like a letdown in comparison.
Right, so it sounds like the review paints this picture of, well, a real disparity. You've got these impressive technical achievements, Abbott's great performance,
Yeah, the sound, the practical effects.
but then weighed down by writing that felt underdeveloped, dialogue that was clunky, characters, especially Charlotte, that didn't quite work, and some lazy plotting.
That's absolutely the core tension Munoz identifies in her review. And her overall conclusion is, well, pretty negative.
So ultimately, a thumbs down.
Pretty much. She calls it a disappointing effort, both from Whannell and from Blumhouse, especially after the high bar set by Invisible Man.
Wow, disappointing. That stings after the hype.
It does. And she even suggests that despite Abbott's work and the cool transformation effects, the whole thing ends up feeling a bit like a cash grab.
Oof. Calling it a cash grab kind of dismisses those positives she mentioned earlier, doesn't it? Suggests the whole wasn't greater than the sum of its parts.
Exactly. It implies the creative vision or the execution just wasn't strong enough overall. And her final line is really memorable, kind of sums it all up. She says this, wolf whimpers, rather than howls.
Ouch. Yeah, that paints a picture. Lack of power, lack of impact.
Precisely. It just didn't roar the way a Wolfman movie maybe should. And she even speculates, based on this outcome, that this could be it for this attempt at a Blumhouse dark universe. Maybe kill it before it really starts.
Which brings us right back to those high stakes we talked about at the beginning. Heavy stuff. The review does say it's screening in UK cinemas, though.
Yeah, it's out there for people to see and make up their own minds. Reviews are just one take, after all.
True. But this one from Mary Munoz gives a really clear breakdown, strengths versus weaknesses. You've got the undeniable positives, the sound, Abbott, the practical effects.
But heavily countered by the perceived flaws. The script, the dialogue, the characterization, especially Garner's role, and those horror tropes.
It really does highlight that tricky balance in making these things work, doesn't it? Even if parts are brilliant, if the story or characters feel weak, the whole thing can just wobble.
Absolutely. It shows that cool effects and a great lead aren't always enough. The fundamental story, character, logical progression, they still need to be solid, especially in horror, where suspension of disbelief is key.
Yeah, exactly. All the pieces got to fit. So, thinking about this review, especially the criticisms about character, plot choices, that whole Charlotte arc, what does that make you, the listener, think about these attempts to update classic monsters or build these big universes?
Is it just incredibly hard to give these iconic creatures and the people around them real depth, make them feel modern and complex, while still delivering the scares and the creature feature fun?
Yeah, it's a tough needle to thread, isn't it? Something to definitely chew on as we inevitably see more of these reboots and universe attempts down the line.